Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss Boris Johnson's latest win. As events have unfolded, he has got his general election bill through the Commons, or it's about to go through the Commons. It is now certain to, without any bothersome amendments, at least from his point of view. But first, if you find yourself enjoying the video, then please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. So there were various amendments proposed. One was to lower the voting age for 16 and 17-year-olds. This is not unusual. It's not even that unusual in this country. It does happen, particularly in Scotland, where you can vote for anything as a 16, 17-year-old, including the Scottish Parliament elections, but not for general elections in this country. So it would have been easy to set up. There is precedent for it. But that amendment wasn't even selected for a vote, so it's not like it was defeated. There was also an amendment to allow EU citizens that have settled status to vote as well. You know, they're basically UK citizens in every real sense. No, that wasn't selected either. And obviously there was an amendment for a referendum, but that would also include having the election put back to May. Probably realistically where it'd have to be put back to with the other two amendments. That wasn't selected either for whatever reason. There are reasons potentially, but the fact of the matter is that those amendments have failed. So Boris Johnson is going to get his general election, the one he wanted, and on his terms. And he had threatened, he'd threatened to pull the bill if it was significantly amended. And he fears it might have been. A reporter bumped into Dominic Cummings, who seemed to be convinced that the election wouldn't go ahead as Parliament would vote to allow EU citizens. He was convinced that goes to a vote, Parliament will absolutely vote for that. And I think he was probably right. At which point Boris Johnson would pull the bill altogether and we wouldn't be having the general election. It'd be the second time he's pulled his own bill after it was supported by Parliament. You know, MPs voted in favour of his withdrawal agreement bill, and then Boris Johnson pulled it because they were saying, hang on, we want to have a little look at that and maybe change a few things. Same thing here. He doesn't like the things being changed. But as Jess Phillips stood up and said, the problem with the government is that it's behaving like it's got a majority. It doesn't. Can't just keep stamping its little feet when it doesn't get its own way. But that's exactly what they've been doing. But it hasn't been significantly amended, which means Boris Johnson gets the general election exactly as he wants it. The date may change a little bit, but it'll change in the same week, pretty much. Now, the bill will now go through to the House of Lords. It is possible that the House of Lords could put in some of the amendments that Johnson doesn't like, but I wouldn't really bank on that, given that it wasn't selected even for a vote in the Commons. I would imagine that that will be taken note of in the Lords. And although there'll be people standing up and speaking in favour of it, and it will take longer to go through the Lords than it has through the Commons, it's probably going to be a bit of a rubber stamping, I would suggest. It was actually quite funny to watch everything today. So you're watching some of the professional political commentators shifting from, you know, this morning, oh yeah, the December election, yeah, it's going to happen now, Labour have swung behind it, to saying, oh, it may not happen, to, oh no, it's probably not going to happen, and then back to, oh yeah, it's all on again. It was really quite funny as they were sort of trying to keep up with what was very predictably going to happen. I mean, I said this morning it was likely because I wasn't at all convinced that the amendments would stick. But if they did, it was pretty certain that the election wouldn't take place in December. I mean, you know, that was the situation. So until we knew how the amendments were going to go, we couldn't say that there was any certainty or even, you know, close to certain chance of this election. So it is now basically 95% certain. And I also don't know about the date thing. So Boris Johnson wants it to be on the 12th of December. The Lib Dems and the SNP want it to be on the 9th of December. And there's an amendment and it may well be changed to that. And people are trying to draw a link here with university students. 2 days in the same week. Now, here is the thinking. Oh, like on the 9th of December, they're all at university. They can all go out and vote. On the 12th of December, all back home. They'll go, oh, no, we don't know how to vote. It's a nonsense. There's a nonsense for a few reasons. The first of which is I'm not at all convinced that all university students are suddenly going to be at home on the 12th. But let's say they are. I haven't really looked into it. And it's a long time since I was at university. So let's say that's the situation. University student that wants to vote. Okay, now they turn 18 before they go to university. All university students are already 18 by the time they go. So when they turn 18, and let's say they don't register until they turn 18, you can register beforehand. I mean, what if there's a general election on your birthday? You can't wait till it's your birthday. You register beforehand. And so when they were registering, and I accept that a lot of young people are not registered, but I'll come to that in a moment. So when these ones who intend to vote are registering, the only address they know is their home address. So they're going to register at their home address. Now, granted, some of them, when they go to university, will go, oh, what if there's an election while we're actually here, wherever it happens to be? Yes, they can also register at that university address. And that is also the point. So if they are very aware that they know they want to vote in advance, and bear in mind, there have already been 2 elections to vote in this year. Many of those university students, in fact, the bulk of them will have been 18 at that point. So if they're of the mind of voting in an election, they've already been registered. And where were they registered? At home. Obviously, 2nd and 3rd years, they may have registered there as well. But the other thing is this. You don't have to pick an address and register there. A university student can register at their home address, their parents' address. They can also register at their university address. And then just on polling day, pick one. Go to whichever one. And that's fine. So there is no basis at all for linking this, saying that if it's on the 12th of December, you'll disenfranchise a load of university students, but if it's on the 9th of December, we're all good. Absolutely balmy. And I think it's a deliberate red herring. I think that the Lib Dems and the SNP are supporting that 9th of December. I've already explained it before, but I just think it's one. Maybe it's just to stop Boris Johnson completely getting his own way, but in reality, I think it's if they're thinking to themselves, look, if there must be a general election this year, then for goodness sake, let's cut this parliament down as much as we can. What they don't want is Boris Johnson doing any funny stuff before parliament dissolves. Remember, once parliament dissolves, which will happen in the first week of November, probably depends exactly when the date is set for, there are no MPs. There's still a government, but there are no MPs. Now, if Boris Johnson manages to ram something through Parliament just before then there's no more parliamentary scrutiny until after the new Parliament forms after the general election. He gets basically 5 weeks with no MPs at all. It's not just that they're suspended. They don't exist. They're not there. So they don't want that. Remember, they were asking him, can we be sure you're not going to try and push through the withdrawal agreement bill if we agree to the election? The leader of the Liberal Democrats was quite clear about that. And I was noting yesterday, it's almost like she was trying to take his word for it. But by bringing the date of the election forward, you make it very difficult for him. In fact, you make it impossible for him to do that. Because he'll basically just, if that date of the 9th is the date, then he has no time. They have to dissolve it next week. They have to dissolve Parliament next week, I think is how it works out. So they give him no time to do any of that. And it is important as well. And as I say, that's why I maintain that that is the date they want. Nothing to do with these students' nonsense. That's just a red herring. It's really just to stop Boris Johnson trying to sneak something through Parliament that will take effect when Parliament is dissolved. Like, oh, I don't know, Brexit. And that's all I read into that. So I will now say the election is almost certain to happen. The only proviso is what the Lords do. But like I've already said, I think they're just going to rubber stamp it now, given what's happened in the Commons today. Yes, they'll talk about it. The Lords do take longer to talk about things than the Commons do. They don't have time limits on debates in the same way that the Commons do. And we will be gearing up for a general election, in all likelihood, in the 2nd week of December. So there we are. Hope you found the video interesting. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please click on the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.